Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting big old guy right here. This is the Buck 110 Slim Folding Hunter Pro. First off, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons who make it possible for me to, in the middle of a freaking podcast, Gear Geeks Live with Tony Scullenbrady, just say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to buy that, and do a review of it, without even thinking twice about it. That's a real gift that they're giving me there. Well, quite literally, they are giving me a financial gift. But nevertheless, that makes my life a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. So thank you to that, patrons. Next thing, size comparison. This is a big freaking knife. This is a Buck 110. Like, flat out. This, the shape of the blade, the handle, everything. This is Buck 110 right here. And so you can see here that compared to the Spyderco, it's freaking big. Here it is against the Rat number 1. Which also makes you realize this is a little big. It's about the same size, actually, as the Rat 1, but the Rat 1, it's itself a little bit big, and here it is against the Ontario Rat 2. So, yeah, it's a big knife. Although, actually, one thing to note is that this is the Slim Folding Hunter Pro, and with emphasis on the slim. In terms of overall thickness, this is actually a little thinner than the Rat number 2, and it's about the same thickness as your Spyderco. So, both in terms of the overall size and in terms of blade stock, maybe the 110's a little thicker, but nevertheless, you can definitely see that this is it's a big knife. Next thing, a quick note on this, a program note, if you will. Tony over at Everyday Commentary, who's one of the reviewers I respect most in the game, and he and I host, there's a podcast, Gear Geeks Live. It's great. You should check it out. Well, I think it's great, but I'm biased. Anyways, where we talk about gear, and we actually came to a decision that both of us were going to buy this knife, and then both of us were going to review it, just to see what two people looking at the same thing have to say, because we've reviewed the same thing on a couple of occasions, but we haven't talked about this review ahead of time. So I'm shooting this one entirely from my side of the world. But keep an eye out for his review, because it'll be interesting to contrast his and I's approach there. And then finally, this is a Buck 110, like flat out. I mean, right here, Buck 110. And that is, and it is really legitimately like a 110. It's just a newer iteration. It's a newer version using micarta handles here instead of the wood and brass bolsters and whatnot. And a little bit slimmer, and also including both a pocket clip, which is a big change, as well as thumb studs, which address a lot of my major, those things combined address some of my major issues that I had with the 110 in its regular review. So, anyways, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this guy in light of that. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your Buck 110 Slim Folding Hunter Pro. Ooh, that's a name. So on the good side, this is a very carryable knife, and I mean that in a bunch of different ways. I mean, to start with, it is relatively thin. I mean, seriously, there is not that much thickness to this guy. It comes in at like 0.38 inches here, which is nice. I'll take it any day of the week. But it's also relatively lightweight, especially compared to the original 110, which was deeply not lightweight. This guy coming in here at 2.94 ounces. Oh, yeah, that's an improvement. This guy is, and by the way, that's way under an ounce an inch, and that's pretty impressive. So I appreciate that very much. And then the clip itself actually works pretty well. I did a little bit of rebending, just to, I think I backed the tension off a little bit on this guy, but the clip works well, and honestly, this is just easy to carry, because profoundly, it's sitting in your right pocket here, as it's currently configured, although you could carry it lefty, whatever. And the back side of it is 100% smooth. It's relatively thin, it's lightweight. This is a really big knife that doesn't really feel like a really big knife in the pocket, and so I really do appreciate how carryable they've made this, and that's a nice contrast with the original. So there you go. Next thing, the blade on this guy is absolutely solid. It is a relatively long blade, but it's got a very thin, hollow grind to it, meaning it cuts very well, even though the stock is maybe a little thicker than you might expect, but still, it cuts very well. It is S30V steel in this particular edition, and it is heat-treated by Paul Boss, and Boss, I'm not quite sure which. Either way, I think it's Bose, but he is a master of heat treating, or at least it's heat treated under his supervision. I don't know that he touched this one, but nevertheless, and so they are able to do really good things with the steel. It is just kind of a known fact that Buck, through their heat treating process, is able to do better things with steels than most of the other companies. So S30V from Buck is going to be a little more impressive than S30V from some other random jackass, as just a matter of rule, and indeed that's been my experience here. It's very nicely nicely done. Next thing, this does have thumb studs, and in fact, they work well. I mean, this is pretty easy to get open with a single hand there, which is good, and they're ambidextrous, which is really nice, because that means that coupled with the fact that the clip can be mounted to both sides, and that it's a backlock, which doesn't favor a hand at all, this knife is truly ambidextrous. There is absolutely no reason why a lefty or a righty would have a better or lesser experience with it. You can have exactly the same experience as a lefty, and that's honestly great. That is one of the most common comments on my videos, is like, well, yeah, but it's terrible for lefties. Like, I get it. It's only 10% of the population, but still, damn it. I mean, it's nice to see when somebody really makes it right for a lefty. Makes it right for a lefty. Oh, God, I didn't even mean that one. But anyways, it is a truly ambi knife. And so that's great. Gives them a great option. And speaking of the backlock, this is a backlock. And backlocks are both plenty strong. I mean, in terms of actual durability, yeah, backlocks are good to freaking go. But they've got some nice advantages here. And the fact that this is a tail-style backlock, it works well. There's no complaints about the lock on this at all. And it does lock, which is also a nice thing. The material here, this is a micarta sort of thing. I believe I purchased the, coyote tan or whatever version of it. And, with micarta, it can tend to either get bleached out by, like, if you put some alcohol on there, it'll remove some of the oils. And then you can, I ended up kind of putting a little bit of mineral oil onto this to darken it up a little bit. But nevertheless, the micarta on this is actually quite nice because it adds a little bit of texture here. This is very easy to grab onto and to hold onto. This is not really going anywhere. Even when I try and pull, it's staying there. Coupled with the overall contouring here, this is absolutely good to go. And by the way, the ergonomics are nice, and the clip, at least for my hands, which are given smaller than most, clip really doesn't interfere with much of anything. So with this micarta on here, not only looking pretty good, because micarta looks pretty good generally, but it also just makes for a nice non-slip experience. I like this micarta a lot. I think the handle on this is profoundly well done. Mind you, there's really nothing but micarta going on here, so that's something to keep in mind, but stay. Then finally, not quite finally, the price on this guy is pretty fair. You're coming in at about $90 for this guy, and that's for S30V steel, which is actually, it's a solid steel. A lot of people these days are hating on S30V, but I think it's fine, and especially from Buck, yeah, they're doing good there. And it's just it's a good overall solid tool for that money. You're getting a very nicely made, well, okay, we'll get there, and a very nicely materialed knife, there we go, that is a very solid tool with a good warranty that's made in the States for $90. You know what? I think that's pretty fair. And so, to me at least, that's what's good here, is that it's a solid tool, sold at a pretty fair price. The micarta works well. Ergonomics is solid. It is a backlock, which is both plenty strong, and absolutely allows this to be fully ambidextrous, along with the ambi thumb studs here. It is a great blade, which is thinly ground S30V, and it is very, very carryable. To me, what's great about this knife is the fact that it is a contemporary update to the classic. I reviewed the Buck 110 some time back, and I get more hate on that review than I do from anything else. No, that's not true. My Seiko 5 review I get more hate from, but still, I get a lot of people in there constantly saying, oh, Nick, I'm sorry, you do not understand the use of that knife, unless you were gutting a deer with that knife, you're not, and so forth, and so forth. And look, I get it. At some level, the Buck 110, it's a classic. It is absolutely 100% a functional, capable knife, and especially, I gather, if you're hunting bucks or something with it, it's exceptionally good. But the simple fact is that I think for many people, the Buck 110 is not a great solution for a modern, everyday carry knife, because it lacks some of the things that we've come to appreciate as being great things in modern knives, like, for instance, one-hand openability, a pocket clip, those kinds of things. And so what Buck has done here is they've taken a knife that is a great pattern, that is a great design, and that has a lot of things fundamentally right, and they've made a bunch of improvements to it, or at least things that, in my estimation, are improvements. Namely, they've gotten rid of the whole belt pouch affair by adding a clip. They've added the studs. They've reduced the weight a little bit, but they've kept a lot of the fundamental nature of it, and they've created something here that I think is way more compelling, or at least is differently compelling, in a way that I think is going to speak to more people, or at least to a different set of people, than the original 110 did. I love seeing Buck taking what they know works, the 110, and iterating on it, improving it, or at the very least, changing it up for a different group of people. And because that's just wonderful. Rather than just creating a new model every damn week, like some companies are doing, they're focusing on stuff that works and seeing if they can make it work differently or better. And so I love seeing that. And I hope that Buck continues playing around with this, taking some of their existing time-tested freaking patterns and seeing if they can make them work for a different situation as they have here. And so to me, that's great, is that they've done what's great is that they've done this contemporary update to the classic 110 that feels convincingly like a 110, but maybe better for a lot of folks. On the bad side, a couple of little issues here. To start with, I mean, this is absolutely a big knife with a big old long blade. I mean, depending on how you want to measure this guy, the blade on this guy is coming in, over 3.5 inches every day of the week. And that's a lot of freaking blade length on it. It's a biggy knife. Next thing, it is they've got a little bit of a non-committal recurve here. What you can see here is that they sharpened all the way up to the heel there, but they may have, sharpened a little too aggressively down in here. I'm not 100% sure, but it's yeah, it's not ideal. I'd like to see maybe a sharpening choil there. You could add one, but it's starting to develop a little bit of a recurve already, and that's not stellar. Next thing, this is a two-hand close-only knife. I mean, it's got the back-based back lock here, a tail lock sort of situation. And there may be a graceful way to do it. In fact, I did try sort of experimenting, like one hand, if you press down here, you can kind of get this disengaged, and then you can do something like that. But you know what? That requires some kind of an external surface, whether it's a desk or a leg, if you feel like living dangerously. Whereas, a lot of backlock knives, particularly the mid-lock variety with this little kickstop here, can easily be closed one-handed. Maybe if I were a more skilled human being, I would be able to pull that off, but I haven't been able to in the time that I carried this, and that's I don't know, that's something to keep in mind. Then on the bad side, finally, this is a pinned construction knife. As you can see here, all of these things are just pins. These are the clip screws. But aside from the clip screws, there are no user serviceable parts. There is no way to disassemble this knife. There's no way to loosen up the pivot a little bit. There's no way to, get in there and clean things out, short of, just trying to wash it out or something. And I did, in fact, try and do that at some point to try and, well, we'll get there. But either way, I'm not a big fan of the pin construction. I know that this is something that Buck does a lot, and I know that traditionally speaking, that was kind of the option. But damn it, we have learned so much about knife making in terms of the ability to use great screws that make knives easy to take down. I sure hope that Buck considers, as they're making improvements for the next round of this guy, to consider making that improvement there. So, to me, that's the bad here, is that it is pinned construction, which is not great, although it is workable. It is two-hand close only. The blade is already starting to recurve a little bit, for lack of a choil, and it is a pretty long blade, and just a pretty big and long knife anyways. So, that's, keep that in mind. On the ugly side, there are two ugly things here. One of them is just ugly, and that is the clip. I really don't like the clip on this guy. Not only is it pretty huge, I mean, seriously, look at the clip compared to, and not like on the long dimension, but on the wide dimension. That's a big, burly freaking clip. And that's something, but also you've got this little cutout here. And it took me a while, it took me embarrassingly long to figure out exactly what that was. It turns out, it's the little anvil thing that they've got on their packaging. Their logo is this anvil, but the problem is it's not rendered with enough, sort of situation to be able to tell that that's... I was looking at it like this, is that a state? Is that like a country? I thought they were made in the U.S. Is it, or like a finger? Hey, wrong hand. Maybe this? I don't freaking know. Oh, gotta get that up there. Whatever it is, it doesn't scream anything to me, and what it is just big on the outside of the pocket, so it's just, I'm not a big fan of it. I find it just ugly. Even though the clip is effective, that's just not aesthetically something I'm in love with. I'd much prefer they'd done a smaller clip and, left that whole affair off, but that's kind of neither here nor there, right? Yeah. What is ugly in the more philosophical sense to me is the action on this knife. So I have put a surprising amount of work into this knife in an effort to make sure that it wasn't like just a break-in sort of thing, the knife will smooth out over time. I played with this knife a lot. I, have been doing this, just sitting there watching TV. My wife's looking at me like I'm freaking crazy. Well, at this point, she knows. But still, just trying to wear it in. Trying desperately. I've tried lubricating it. I've tried cleaning it out. I've tried... And each time, this is just incredibly gritty. You can probably hear the gratitude as I'm doing that. And you know what? That's just not great. And in fact, you can see where the handle is rubbing, and that's embedded into the metal at this point in time. I think there's probably some metal chunk or something in there from the factory that just got pinned into this situation. But as a result, this knife just runs really ugly as a result. As I'm kind of popping this open, I can use the thumb stud, but it's very start-stoppy because there are areas where it's harder to open and easier. It's a very, very poor action. It does have a little bit of play. The play isn't really enough to matter that much, so that's not the biggest deal. But although the knife works, it opens, it closes, it's a secure lockup and whatnot, the action on it is supremely unsatisfying. This is the roughest knife I've handled in a while, and that's just not great because they can do so much better. And so, to me at least, that's ugly. They could have made this knife run just beautifully, but it really, really doesn't. And so I hate seeing it like that, and since it's pinned shut, I can't get in there and make any tweaks either, so it kind of is what it is. And so that's what's ugly to me, is that the action on this is really profoundly non-smooth, and that it has this very ugly cutout on the clip, which I guess is the anvil. Final conclusions here. Look, this one is hard for me to conclude, because at some level I acknowledge this to be a very, very good tool. I mean, seriously, it does work quite well, and this could very easily be somebody's only knife. I can think of no shortage of people in my life who I could hand this knife to, and they could be very, very happy with it. Provided I sharpen it every so often for them, they could use this for a long time and be perfectly okay with it. It is a classic blade, a good construction. It is a tool, well, good in the sense of like materials and whatnot. It is a tool that works quite well, and it is a version of the 110 that I can absolutely recommend for somebody's everyday carry. If you're looking for something that's lightweight, long, classic, and thin, easy to carry, this is definitely something to consider. And at this price point, there's a lot of joy here. So it is a good knife, that is, without question. I like so much of what they're putting down here that it's really hard to not be over the moon with this knife. But at the same time, the action is the fundamental issue here. I mean, the pin construction bugs me, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. But that action just bothers me immensely. And this is where I feel like a knife snob. This is where I feel like I diverge from your average jackass who walks into a knife store and wants to get something that they're going to carry and beat on for 30 years until they buy a new one. Or 10 years or 8 years. I don't know how much life this thing's got it in. But either way, this is where I diverge, because considering that you can get many knives out there, your Ontario Rat number 2 here, this is very, very smooth and was pretty smooth out of the box. This is very, very gritty and has continued to be very gritty no matter what I have tried to try and address that. It leaves me feeling like this knife gets the job done. It is very much function forward, but it is function forward in a way that's a little frustrating to me. It's like they have clearly just decided, you know what? I don't care. Whether it was this single knife, this one factory installer made one that was just brutally gritty, or whether they're all like this, I can't really vouch. But at the same time, it's really ugly, and it changes it from being, oh, this is a great tool, because if this were like beautifully smooth, if the action on it were just like, oh, then it would be like, yes, buy this knife. This is great. But as it stands, my inner knife snob is struggling here. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's effective. It gets the job done. But it's not stellar. And that's enough that I wouldn't necessarily want to keep this guy around in my collection, just because it's like, I know this can be better. Now, like I said, though, this is where my bias starts to be very, very apparent. This is where I am fundamentally different, and this is where you need to consider your own needs and your own desires. If you're hearing me talking about the action and you're like, oh, you freaking whiner, I'm just knee-deep in a freaking white tail by the end of the day, then okay, sure, then go ahead and buy it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be full of, whatever it is that you're going to be cutting anyways after a little while, and it probably, whatever. But for me, as a higher-end knife snob, I just can't. And so ultimately, my feelings here are that this is a profoundly good knife. Absolutely 100% is a functional tool. Buck has nailed it here. There are some things they can nail a little better next time, but they have nailed it. But, oh God, I hope the actions are better on the rest. And as a knife swab, like a knife swab, as a knife swab, I absolutely 100% can't do it. And so, but that's maybe just me being insane. So there you go. The Buck 110 here, Slim Folding Hunter Pro, whatever you call it, is a very, very nice knife in many, many ways, although I just wish it were nice in one more, and then I'd be over the moon. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and the Buck review stops here.